No, I won't let anyone take him. Not again. It's mine.
Ma'am?
Who are you?
Whoa! Drop the knife! Drop the knife! Put it down! Put it down! Drop the knife!
And freeze. So, what do you think is wrong with this scenario? As of before, even today, certain police officers are still doing the exact same thing. People that really don't know how to deal with encounters with persons with mental illness. My name is Emmanuel, and this is Sam's Babe. And here we're going to talk about police interactions with people with mental illness. We're going to highlight the general and procedural history of the issue itself, the development of the problem, the initiatives that the police leaders and politicians have drafted and created, so that way incidents like this will never happen again, or at least be minimized. As well as we're going to talk about how this affects police legitimacy, and concluding with our own suggestions and recommendations for reform.
Hi, Sam. As we said before, we are doing a police response to mental health. Myself, I'm Rob, and we've got Tissa in the group, along with Joe, Emmanuel, Alex, and Tony. So before we get into the initiatives and the procedures and everything, I'm just going to go over a quick meat and potatoes about the history, about why police and people with mental illness are coming into contact so frequently. So in the mid-90s, the conservative government decided by saving money, they would get rid of many social services that consisted of counseling for community centers, as well as psychologists, and that effect for people with mental illness, that burden got pushed onto the police officers. So with the effects of downloading, police officers took on more of a role to have to deal with people with mental illness without any training directed towards it. Because of that, we've seen high-profile cases in Ontario, where such as Sammy Atim, who was shot downtown 4 years ago, as well as other high-profile cases such as Mr. Diaz and Kanowski in Vancouver Airport when he was in distress just because he couldn't figure out how to get out of the airport properly. So because of the effects of downloading, we've seen high-profile cases happen because certain police officers aren't too sure or don't know how to respond to people with mental illnesses. Response to downloading, from what we've seen so far, is that there has been a constant need for police to somewhat get their act together and learn how to deal with people that are dealing with mental health issues that are in crises.
Institutions traditionally exist to protect society from people with mental illness who live beyond the closed doors. Mental hospitals in neighborhoods create a sense of a mental illness culture. It tended to make communities look easily susceptible to mental illness and like they needed extra help in that area to avoid psychiatric treatment. In the 1950s and 60s, policies were put in place to stop growth at institutions to avoid over-hospitalization and overcrowding by putting long-term patients back onto the streets. And because of that, they were able to accept new patients. But after the policies and legislations were placed, the public feared patients would be a danger to society and could commit violent crimes now that they're released without further treatment. This put a sense of fear into the public's eyes and made them sort of uncomfortable with the idea of people with mental illness out on the streets. In the mid-1960s, criticism arose over the fact that institutions weren't humane, effective, or efficient from the community of mental health, which was the incentive for the Kennedy administration to make federal legislation that encouraged deinstitutionalization of mental hospitals. In 1967, police really worked with the mentally ill and were often reluctant when it came to dealing with people with mental illness unless they were becoming a serious threat to society. Even though police are trained to deal with people with mental illness, they prefer not to because police feel they aren't adequately trained to do so. But studies have found that police spend 25 to 50% of their time dedicated to social service calls, resulting in 90% of their time revolving around conflict management and crisis intervention. Therefore, there was a huge need for them for society and them to become more trained and to understand how to deal with these calls?
So over the years, police have been encountering more and more people with mental health issues on the job. This is because in the 60s and 70s, a whole bunch of people with mental health issues have gone homeless after they were deinstitutionalized. Former Supreme Court Justice Frank Cabucci stated that this was a failure on the government's part because when they became homeless, the government failed to effectively treat their mental health and instead forced it on the police officers who weren't receiving as much training or have much knowledge on mental health in the first place. So in 1988, police had entered the home of Lester Donaldson, who was a paranoid schizophrenic who had minor encounters with the police previously. So he had pulled out a knife and he was shot and killed by an officer. So since his death, it led to the development of legislative review as well as collaboration between mental health agencies and police services. So since his death, agencies have actually started to add more training and train their officers more on crisis intervention. So their training, they weren't receiving as much training as they were today on mental health. Now they added crisis intervention.
So in regards to the problems in the previous slide, here are some of the initiatives that we have found on the internet that were designed by government officials and police organizations. One is the Crisis Intervention and De-Escalation Training. This program was designed after the events in 2007 where RCMP officers responded to a crisis situation at a Vancouver airport. In that interaction, the victim, Robert Dzinski, was tasered by RCMP officers multiple times, which resulted in his death. After his death, organizations came up with training programs like the Crisis Intervention De-Escalation Training to help officers understand what to do during a crisis and what is the best course of action to undertake to help the person in crisis come together and help him. Another program is the CIT, the Mobile Crisis Intervention Unit. This program is in Toronto, which puts one officer and one nurse from the hospital in each division, goes into the neighborhood and helps with people in crisis. In the following video, you will be seeing a Toronto police officer and a nurse go to house to help these people in crisis.
We're on our way over. This is a call that the police went on yesterday, and we got a call later on in the evening asking us to go and talk to this little girl. She's 11 years old and was threatening to kill herself. But they talked to her, and her mother talked to her, and they were able to calm her down so she wasn't feeling suicidal at that time last night. So they just wanted us to go by and talk to her and see if we could offer her something.
Police legitimacy is a very important topic to talk about when it comes to contemporary policing. Police legitimacy remains as the main focus of community policing as it embodies the very principle of it, trust. Without trust, there's no police legitimacy and no community policing. Without trust, the community will have no intention to voluntarily cooperate with the law because they have no reason to believe that the police have their best interests in mind. Lack of trust for the police is directly linked to increases in crime, and as there is an increase in crime, the public trusts the police less, and so on. It's a vicious cycle. Mental health has been a hot topic recently due to the way it relates to police legitimacy. It all comes down to a lack of resources and training. In recent years, there has been a dramatic increase in the way of critical mental health encounters between those who suffer from it and the police. There have been good and bad encounters, but it is safe to say that the majority of these do not end well. There are a variety of reasons for these negative outcomes, but the primary of which that everyone can agree upon is a lack of training. Due to the fact that mental health only became a big issue not too long ago, we still have not had enough time to become fully aware of it. There is still so much that we don't know about mental health and those who suffer from it, and as a result, it's almost impossible to give officers all the proper training they require. This is not to say we haven't come a long way, but there's still quite a ways to go before we fully understand mental illness. And because of this lack of knowledge, officers still have difficulty with the proper assessment of people they encounter and how to deal with them. There's a huge reliance of police officers on hospitals to be able to take in mental health individuals who they themselves aren't always sure how to deal with either. It happens time and again where an officer will apprehend someone under the Mental Health Act and bring them to the psych ward at the hospital. The hospital will do their best to treat them, but will essentially have to let them go once they no longer present a harm to themselves or to the community. The root cause still goes without being addressed, and the individual is back on the street again, back to square one. The other issue that rises out of a lack of training is the number of mental health scenarios that lead to deadly encounters of use of force. The officers simply do not have the ability to de-escalate the scenario, and so leading to more encounters resulting in death. This alone has done so much to damage police legitimacy, especially with the increase of visibility of the police. People all around the world now have the ability to view the encounters between police and mental health individuals from completely different countries at the push of a button. This has given the general public the ability to analyze and criticize every single move an officer makes without ever knowing the big picture. Not only do we have a lack of training, but there also seems to be a lack of resources as well. Because of a lack of proper funding, Canada has been improperly equipped to accommodate mental health individuals. There is no safe residence for these people to stay due to the fact that so many psych facilities have been shut down. The problem this creates is that it puts so many mental health individuals on the streets where they become homeless. And because of their socioeconomic status, it is only a matter of time before they are encountered by the police. Again, this brings us back to a lack of resources because the officers not only have nowhere to bring a mental health individual to, but they also have no way of dealing with the problem themselves except to apprehend under the Mental Health Act, bring them to a regular hospital, and essentially continue spinning their wheels. People lose their trust as incidents like these pop up more often. The public are supposed to trust the police to keep everyone safe, and rightly so. What it all comes down to is, as I said, a lack of resources and a lack of training. These are the root causes of all these deadly force encounters that we have seen recently, and if addressed properly, will do a whole lot of good for police reputation and legitimacy.
Despite all the problems that have been presented, there are certain instances where the police are stipulating a formal guideline. The guidelines such as the Canadian Mental Health Association, titled Not Just Another Call, Police Response to People with Mental Illness in Ontario, which is found under the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police website, that contains a list of major mental diseases and the proper responses to be initiated by police officers. There's also the form of working committee and groups, such as the CMITs in the coast, Toronto and Peel, respectively. And also, aside from those, we also drafted our own recommendations. Recommendations that we noticed on the CMIT websites themselves, that the CMITs are only available between 9 p.m., 11 a.m. and 9 p.m., which means that they're not available for a response between the time of 11 p.m. up all the way to the morning, which is where and when majority of crimes or even interactions or homeless occurs. So we do incentivize that for the CMIT to work properly, for them to have a 24-hour service, also assisted in refortifying the qualifications or the training procedures itself, following strict guidelines, or even producing a generalized guideline for all police services to follow. And also in terms of forming an oversight committee, a committee that consists of both police officers that is currently within the force, that police officers that are veterans, and also consists of people who have experience dealing with mental health or people with professional mental health experiences.
So for other recommendations, we have the mental health database. The mental health database is where officers and mental health officials can store data that they have gathered through their interactions with people in crisis and from hospital information, where they be able to interact with the database to find information relevant to whoever they are interacting with. So if they get a call from dispatch saying that there's a mental person with a crisis and they get a name, they could just search up their name information and they can see what they have so they can be better prepared to enter the situation and have a course of action to de-escalate it. The database will be accessed by police officers, hospital medical officials, and only when they are needed.
And one more thing is to open more treatment facilities. One problem that resonates within our research is that majority of police officers, when encountering people with mental illness, most of them does not know what to do, including the fact that most of them don't know the available resources that they have. And some that do know does not know where is the closest treatment facilities for them to get help. So what this constitutes is that more police time is basically wasted in terms of delivering these patients towards the help that they do need. So that is why opening more treatment facilities will definitely be beneficial for not only for a place where you can put or we can secure people with mental illness, but also a place where they can get help, the community can get training in terms of encountering or dealing with them, or even a place where police legitimacy between the community and the police can actually show a stronger bond. So all in all, out of all the recommendations that we did put through, there are 4 core suggestions that resonates within all these recommendations, which is to have a close relationship with mental health departments, for mental health resources such as clinics and housings be available and accessible, for the police to have better crisis intervention teams, and for each officers to be well versed in handling scenarios dealing with persons with mental illness. Thank you.
He's coming after my baby. I have to protect him. Stay away.
Ma'am, I'm Officer Emmanuel. I'm just wondering what's going on here.
That man there. He's trying to get my baby.
Where is the baby right now?
He's in his room. I have to protect him.
Well, how about you just let me and my partner, Officer Tessa over there, and we do our job protecting you and the baby. So why don't we just calm down for now and just drop the knife?
No, I can't protect my baby if I get rid of this knife.
Ma'am, we're here to protect you and the baby, so there's really no need for that knife.
You sure you can protect him?
Yes, I'm quite sure that we can protect you and the baby with the man far away from you as possible and your baby. So there's really no need for that knife. Right? We'll just drop that knife really slowly. Really, really slowly. Just back away from the knife. And then Officer Tessa, And this is Officer Tessa, along with my
Who's
colleague.
he?
Hi, I'm Joe. I'm just a registered nurse. I'm here to help.
And we're just here to help you and your baby and put this bad man away.
And freeze. So, as we've seen in this scenario, opposed to the first one, these are actually situations and initiatives that we believe can be used for police services to deal with people in crisis. This also does two great things. It also saves lives, as opposed coming in with open arms and communication styles, but it also enhances police legitimacy. If all situations can end like this, then police legitimacy in all communities and neighborhoods would be far better than it is right now.